condition to another.
We are now at a new crossroad where change is evident once again.
What does not serve us must transform us anew.
Returning to our original state of oneness and true nature of that which created who we truly are.
Confusion was the way of the past. Enlightenment is the way of the now and future, shedding away the layers of deceit.
We now bring you the transformation of the two who started as one. Our fearless planet never stands still.
Earth has been in a process of transition, and we are not exempt from this remarkable ongoing reality. Welcome
everybody.
to Real Talk with the Cummings. My name is Mark Angelo.
And my name is Lynna Ariel.
There you go. I know you guys kind of worry, what's next? What's going to happen? What's going to be the changes? What?
Right.
It's staying this way.
It's staying that way, yeah.
Oh,
it's a little hard.
Oh, my
hard
God.
to go back and forth.
People don't realize, it is hard and it is taxing, and people love to criticize, make fun of. But the back and forth does create a lot of problems. I stopped taking testosterone in January, and it's a good, gosh, I didn't start till 3 weeks ago back on. So I was off for a good 9 months or 8 months, or my math is correct.
I mean, you've reset yourself a few times during our, time
But this was
together.
the longest time I didn't have any. Hey, girl with no name, howdy. The longest time I didn't have testosterone.
Was it like when you were vegan, like raw vegan? Didn't you
I did
without tea for a long time?
But I don't know if it was longer than this period. No. I think it was probably like 5-6 months or something like that. But I'm not getting any younger. The body going up and down. I mean, I was not functioning to my ultimate functioning level without tea. I need it. Personally, this person right here needs it. I've been on it since 2003. I have gone off and on several occasions. Not all of them has been detransition. It's just I like to clean my body out.
Yeah, like one time you sensed something going on with your lymph nodes or something, since you're so
I'm very in tune
with your body, right?
Yeah, and so I went raw vegan. I stopped taking hormones for a while, just let my body clean out. It's kind of like bodybuilders, how they do cycles. And they're supposed to, let's say you're on a 12-week cycle, the same amount of time you're on that cycle, you're supposed to be off of it. Allow your receptors to clear out. So I've always thought it was good to, let the body do its thing, but not as long as I did this time. I mean, 9 months almost, that was a very long time.
And your body showed distress from not having hormones. Totally. I mean, there's going to be people out there that are going to be like, so you're addicted to tea?
It's not a matter of addicted. It's a matter of are you addicted to air that you breathe? It's like we need hormones. I have no ovaries. And even when I did have ovaries, I was very allergic to estrogen. I was constantly in the gynecologist. I was all messed up because of my intersex condition. So estrogen is always, I remember one time a doctor put me on birth control because my time of months were so erratic.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be on that stuff for more than 3 weeks. It made me sick. And, it's just, that's how it is. This is how I'm built. So anyway, welcome all. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. We have a really interesting show for you today. I believe that we are living in a time right now where there's a lot of awakening. People are really becoming aware, those that are not dead asleep, and religiosity is their main point. But those that are waking up and are realizing that what we've been told kind of sounds fishy and it doesn't fit at all. I mean, it's like trying to put Lego sets together that don't interconnect.
Yeah.
They're all, and that's what, in my humble opinion, all religions, but number one religion that really is out of place is Christianity.
Or you're adding up a math problem and you're like, okay, here's the 5 apples and here's the 6 oranges and here's the 11 pears and the 10 bananas. And wait a minute, this doesn't add up.
No.
Something's not quite right here.
Yeah.
you know, and that's what happens unless you're just, you know, flat out believing without regard to thinking that maybe you could be believing something that's not true.
Right.
And the only way to get there is to really step back and look at what you're thinking and what you're believing and why you believe.
Right.
You know, the purpose.
And gathering up the evidence, you know, because this whole blind faith thing doesn't work. I mean, there was a time when people believed the earth was flat. Some of these Christians believe the earth is flat still.
I do.
You know, and I mean, it's just, we evolve, we grow. We start to really understand the truth of the matter of things. I had this guy that we had a blog that's arguing that the science clearly says that there is a God. You know, and it's like, what science are you reading? The
Well,
science
they're
of
going to
Christianity?
point out to you, like, just look at creation. It's like, yeah, look at it. There's certain beautiful things about it, but there's certain things that, you know, a rose and thorns. I mean, that just doesn't make sense.
Plus, people don't understand that the concept of this creator that they have in their mind, which they make very small, is not at all the God of the Bible, is not at all what they could even imagine in their head. They can't put this energy source that we're all part of in a box. This energy source that we're all part of does not require worship, does not require you to give them burnt offerings. Only a reptile, only a lower being will require things of that nature. You know, reptilians require that kind of stuff. And there's an interesting part about that. During the time that these reptiles are encapsulated here on this planet, that's when all these religions, from like Judaism, Muslim beliefs, and Christianity.
But you do realize that they're going to look at you and they're going to say, reptilian, what encapsulated in this planet? What are you talking
about? Their own Bible
talks
about
so bizarre.
it. Their own Bible speaks of these things.
Jeremiah talks about God being a creature that devours and blows fire
from its nose,
and says that he destroyed the earth.
Yeah,
you know,
it's a dragon, a reptile.
Yeah, and then you see all the symbology of dragon, of serpent. You know, from the time in the garden all the way to like when Moses had to put his staff up on the hill and the people had to look at it, at this snake on the staff. And you know, we even have the caduceus, you know, that has that whole serpent thing going on. And we have, you know, within us, we have a serpent, you know, our vertebrae, you know,
the DNA, chromosomes, and connections. There's a lot that we don't know, folks. A lot that we don't know, and we could try to, you know, theorize. We could try to create all sorts of things to make things fit in this neat little box, but we haven't even began to scratch the surface of what and how we were created. And it wasn't about some God created the earth in 7 days and 7 nights, and he rested on the Sabbath, and all. That's just so small. And I learned how small the God of the Bible was by reading the Bible. The more I read the Bible, the smaller God seemed to me, the God of this.
All you had to do is look at the first 5 books of the Bible, and you know, if you get through Leviticus, I would give you a gold medal, because that book is super hard to read through.
It was.
Numbers is not fun.
Exodus was horrid. All of them, you know.
You know, getting through, and then you get to the point where, you know, Moses somehow by hitting a rock, he's incapable of seeing the promised land because he got angry. And it's like God is an angry God, right? This God, this Jehovah, this Yahweh God. But his own servant, Moses, couldn't get angry, right? So he gets mad, and then he can't cross over the Jordan to the promised land. And the promised land, let's remember, is land that did not belong to them. So this God is encouraging them to steal land that doesn't belong to them in the first place. And he gives it to them, but it wasn't theirs.
Exactly. You know
so
what?
this God is He's a thief.
He's a thief. You know what I thought was really funny? Moses had massive handicap. He had a speech impediment. He couldn't speak right. He was like, "Why are you choosing me?"
According to the story.
Yeah. Why are you choosing me? I'm like, I can't even speak. I mean, he would get all nervous before he had to go and do whatever it was. So, I mean, the more I read the Bible, the more I was like, this stuff is just bizarre. Bizarre. Welcome, Terry. And Terry says, "Hello, beautiful people. I'm here for a peaceful discourse." And she wrote,
That's awesome. The Romans took over monotheism and completely distorted it to use as a control mechanism.
Exactly. And that's all religion is, a control mechanism. We're going to get into all that and more, but first we're going to bring you the health tip section of the show as well as the spiritual empowerment section. Let's not confuse spirituality with religiosity, and health and wellness not confused with the medicalized version of what we as a culture have been taught that health is.
Pharmaceuticals.
Exactly. And again, not putting down anybody that needs to take medication. You all are adults. You need to do what's best for you. Please consult your doctor. We here at Real Talk with the Cummings give you our opinion, our belief. They're ours. Doesn't have to be yours. We hope to be able to educate you some way, form, or manner with, our abilities to be able to navigate this health-filled or health-lacking world that we're living in. So, one of the biggest things with people is nutrition.
Oh yeah.
They majority of them don't
get it. Yeah.
Don't know how to eat. They think, I want to diet down and lose 10 pounds for a wedding, and I think that's good. That's killing their metabolism. So today we're going to talk a little bit about calories in and calories out, and also a little bit about metabolism. So calories in, pay attention to the foods you eat and portion size.
Calories out, are you getting enough physical activity?
Results of decreased activity movements are increased fat mass. If you sit around all day watching television and the most exercise you get is your thumb, either with your remote control or doing one of this, something's going to give. And it's usually cellulite on your thighs, your gut starts going out because fat mass will make you look very big.
Decreased muscle mass.
Decrease aerobic capacity, ability of the heart, the lungs to function efficiently.
Decreased oxygen to vital organs.
Oxygen, just like water, is very important. Most people don't even breathe right. You do a lot of shallow breathing. That's why exercising is so good for you, because you're forcing yourself to breathe. Decrease strength.
The effects of exercise on your body. And that's one thing that, I've come to understand is that I'm a mesomorph or something like that, right? Is that what we call me? A mesomorph.
Yeah.
So I have a choice. I can either be overweight and out of shape, or I can do the work and get in shape and have a fit body.
Exactly.
I can't do anything in between. I can't be skinny fat.
No.
That's one thing I can't be is skinny fat.
Right.
If I sit around or if I eat whatever I want to eat, it's just going to sit right on top of me.
Yeah.
So I need to exercise because it is something that my body type has to have.
Right.
It's either that or get fat. Right.
I'm going to address this, although it's nothing to do with what we're talking about right now. Have you ever heard of Edgar Cayce? Yes, I have. And we used to listen to, what's the blonde guy who's like supposedly Edgar Cayce's reincarnation, David Wilcock. So that's right, Edgar Cayce, right, if I remember correctly. But yes, we have. And we've done a meeting and actually watched tons of videos. Anyway, so effects of exercise on your body. What does that do for you? It
improves performance of your heart and lungs.
Builds endurance. How many people huff and puff just going up the stairs, walking from the grocery store to their car? You need to build that endurance.
This is really important. It increases metabolic rate, i.e. it burns calories.
Builds muscle. as you get older, after the age of 35, it's all downhill. Your body starts to break down muscle. The more muscle you lose, the slower your metabolism, the more fat you will gain. The name of the game is to build muscle so your metabolism rises so that your body will become a fat burning machine.
Team says, hola.
Hello, team.
Hola,
How are
team.
you? Thank you for joining us.
Results in the release of chemicals in the brain known as endorphins. And endorphins can improve your mood. So if you feel yourself getting depressed, get out there and walk.
Yeah, work out. I mean, to me, lifting weights is the most therapeutic thing ever. It's the fountain of youth. Because, like I said earlier, at 35, you start losing muscle. You need to add those muscles back to your body so that you start feeling youthful, so that you're slowing down that aging process. You don't help yourself any, but I mean, you notice as we get older, everything starts to get all flabby, and when it's because the muscle just starts to just dissipate.
Yeah.
You need muscle.
It atrophies, right?
Yeah, totally atrophies. So you need to develop and also develop strong bones. Many people, especially here in the United States, a very high level of osteoporosis, and it's because people don't work out. They're not eating the right kind of foods.
Right.
They take calcium pills, but it's not creating what the body needs. It's not just by popping a pill or drinking a gallon of milk. That's just part of the equation. There's many other things that you need to do.
Terry Ross says, I've seen an interesting study that suggests that our blood type is key to our nutritional needs. Might be the reason why no diets fit all, and why some do well on vegan diets and others do not.
Terry, that actual study of blood type is an old study, and it actually has been disproved. There was a huge what do you call it?
Momentum
with it, and then all of a sudden they started doing the research, and they said that that's not true. That blood type is not at all, because people used to swear, well, if I'm type, what is that a friend used to say, I'm type B, I have to have meat and all this, that. I believe there are certain people, depending on where your genetics is, like your family is from the Netherlands or stuff like that. There's certain foods that you've been used to eating, but we learn today that genetics is changeable. Your genes are not written in stone. So blood type really doesn't equate to nutritional needs. I think that any diet that eliminates any type of food group is not a good diet, because your body needs a well-rounded nutritional profile.
And more than that is the fact that it needs to have food that is really fuel for your body, not all this fluff that we have at the grocery store these days.
Yeah, most people.
Things that are prepackaged. Mm-hmm. And if it's in a box, most of the time it's really fluff, right?
Yeah,
it's
because
fluff.
It's loaded with preservatives, additives, things that don't belong in your body, and then your body won't recognize. And she also says, I consult Edgar Cayce via his 1000th of record before I consult a doctor.
Interesting.
Very interesting of that. I truly believe that when you get into, like you mentioned earlier, I get into in my body, I know when something's not right with me before any doctor could tell me. And that's because you become in tune with your inner self. Many people may call your inner self your higher self. I don't believe there's anything. Everything is inward. And it's important to be able to become in tune with who you are, what your needs are, instead of giving your powers away like most religious people do. And Freedom Grower joins us. Dear friends, did not realize you were live.
Oh, yeah. We do a show pretty much every Tuesday evening. Yeah. That's kind of our live hour.
Yeah.
Kind of like the main
one. And then, like this week, we did other ones. But this is our main one. We'll always do a Tuesday at 6.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. They also said...
just tuning in. What's the subject? No evidence for Christ or the Bible? Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much no evidence for Christ. But we're doing
the health section.
The health section of our program right now.
So, what are the benefits of exercise?
Well, it reduces stress, which is an important one to not have to deal with.
Majority of people don't realize they get fat because their body's producing too much cortisol, and that's their abdominal fat. It starts to just store right there because of the excess amount of cortisol in your body, and stress will release that.
Imagine how much stress is being produced right about the time of tax time.
Oh gosh, there's stress nowadays.
All the cortisol.
Yeah. Nowadays, if you're an executive, you notice that most executive, and I did because I used to train a lot of executives, big gut, they're stressed out all the time. And then people tend to eat, and it's a vicious cycle. So benefit of exercise is also prevents weight gain. Although you could have a stellar workout routine, but if you don't eat right, remember this, folks, abs are made in the kitchen.
It prevents weight gain, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it also maintains weight loss.
Yes. It reduces risk of illness and diseases.
It improves your mood.
It does. And improves muscle strength. Strong muscles enable you to do more before you tire.
It builds endurance, enables you to do more before you tire.
That is true. And enables heart and lungs to work more efficiently.
More efficient.
Yeah, and that's
a good thing.
Yeah, when you get older, your lungs, imagine your heart is constantly doing this, and then your lungs are constantly doing this day in, day out. So you require exercise to keep those two working efficiently.
It delivers oxygen and nutrients to your tissues.
It also boosts your energy.
Promotes better sleep and helps you to fall asleep faster and to deepen your sleep.
Since I've been training back up again, now that I'm back on my hormones, I sleep like a baby. I really do, because I'm training a lot harder. You guys are going to see an amazing change in our bodies. And this is a good one.
Improves your sex life. Regular physical activity can lead to enhanced arousal for women.
Mm-hmm.
Men who exercise regularly are less likely to have problems with erectile dysfunction than are men who do not exercise.
And what do we see today? A lot of men that are overweight,
and have ED.
Yeah, and the majority of them have. So they pop a pill thinking it's like, just go to the gym, eat right. You won't need to pop any pills. It'll work like it's supposed to. Gives you a chance to unwind.
Provides an opportunity to do something that you enjoy.
Can provide an opportunity to connect with family or friends in a fun social setting. That is, if your family likes to work out.
It provides the opportunity to enjoy the outdoors.
It leaves you feeling energized and looking better and increased self-esteem. To me, that's the fountain of youth. Weight training is the fountain of youth. People have been searching for it, high and low. And it's weight training, build your muscle. Don't allow your neuromuscular system to deplete, to break down, and you'll feel great.
I see people like we've been watching for motivation before the morning session that we go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
They're always like looking at themselves in the mirror, selfies and stuff, and they're looking at themselves because they've worked so hard on their body. And one of the things that we need to kind of like realize is that it's okay to be proud of yourself. It's okay to give yourself an attaboy, attagirl, because you did this. You worked hard. You earned it. So why can't you smile in front of the mirror and let yourself know how great you feel?
And people think it's vanity and it's off-putting and whatever else, but when you work hard and train hard and you have a nice looking body, why not flaunt it? It's not easy. Anyone could lose weight. You starve yourself, you get on some quick fat diet, but looking good with your clothes off or making your body look really, really good by really training hard and eating healthy takes a lot of work.
Well, when a body does look like that, you can't help but look at it. It's like you go to the gym and you see certain people that obviously have been working on their bodies for quite some time, and they're very good at what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You see the benefits of what they've produced there, and you can't help but look at it because it's so impressive.
I know,
right?
It's like you could always tell that the individual that's really put in the time in the gym, that's really careful what they're putting in their body, from the individual that sits in the gym with their phone
or with their purse.
Yeah, walk
Today.
around with the purse, and like it would help if you put your purse in the locker and really like put effort. If you're in there, might as well make it count. You know, you don't go in there just to fluff. So let's see here. Why is it not-
Freedom
there we go.
Grower.
Freedom Grower says, "Have you ever heard of Wim Hof cold water therapy? It helps me with so many issues of health. The breathing exercise, but honestly, the cold water is tremendously beneficial." Yes, I have. I've seen some of his videos. It seems like it's very invigorating and very helpful, but I don't like.
I tried doing some of that earlier,
Yeah.
when it was summer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now-
See, we're Caribbeans. We don't like cold water. I
Yeah,
don't like
don't
going
like
to-
cold.
No, I don't like cold at all either. But I could see the benefit because of
Oh yeah.
the contraction, vascularization, the contracting. One of the things that I used to always recommend for injuries was hot, first cold, hot, cold, hot. It's like contrast bath type of thing for inflammation. But yeah, that kind of stuff really, really.
I'm sure it works really well.
It does, and it also not just helps physically, but it helps you spiritually and emotionally because you're shocking the living daylights out of your system. I would surely imagine. I don't like cold water. Most people that do.
So
it
you're
every
not going to
year-
do a polar plunge
Oh God,
anytime?
no. That's what I was going to mention. Those people that go in the cold with no clothes and then come out. It's like
Polar
I would get pneumonia.
Yeah.
I'm not that rough and tough. So now we're going to talk about metabolism.
That's important.
As we age, that just kind of goes halt, and that's because you lose muscle. So people eat the wrong kind of foods that don't have the proper energetic combination and flow, so your metabolism just gets sluggish. Your thyroid, other endo glands in your body that will slow down your pituitary gland, your adrenal glands, all this stuff kind of becomes sluggish as you get older, especially your thyroid. And so it's important to get that metabolism running. So you need to eat enough calories. This is one of the big mistakes that a lot of people make. They think lose weight, they think starvation. Your body's not stupid. Your body's programmed that
Millions of years.
I mean, you can't outsmart your body. So you starve yourself, your body goes, oh, we're in
Store time.
starvation mode. We can't let go of stuff. And it holds on. And you're like, but I'm only eating 1,000 calories. And you get on the scale and you get all frustrated. Wrong move. And this is how we've been programmed.
Mhm.
So you need to eat enough calories. And why is that?
When you cut way back on your calories, your body thinks it's starving and conserves energy, slowing down your metabolism, i.e. burning fewer calories for energy than it would otherwise. It goes into like a hibernation phase,
Yeah,
right?
it's like a bear. It knows it's wintertime and,
Metabolism needs to slow down.
yeah, so the body's just like, okay, we can't let go of this.
Conserve what I got.
So that's what happens when you diet. So the name of the game is macros. Knowing the kind of macros you're going to put in your body, exercising, building that muscle. The more muscle you have, the more calories you get to eat, the more fat your body burns. You want to change your body composition. Muscle weight versus fat weight, totally different things. Scale don't tell you a damn thing unless you get one of those scales that tells you how much fat percentage you're losing. So listen to this now. So
Eat often enough.
eat often enough. When you skip meals, you're starving your body so it slows down, burning fewer calories to conserve energy.
Spread your daily calories more frequently throughout the day. Eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner with a few healthy snacks throughout the day. Remember, a snack is less than 200 calories, and meals do not exceed 500.
Exactly.
500. Let's just an example. If you go to Applebee's
Mhm.
and order nachos, you're going to surpass 500 after you had 2 bites, pretty much, because
It's all
these
that
things,
grease.
all the fat, all the sugars, and all the carbs that are in these foods. It's almost like the restaurant industry, big pharma, the government, everybody is out there. The grocery stores, they're all out there to make you fat.
Yeah.
It seems like that's kind of like the default. Let's
Yeah.
just make everyone fat.
Yeah.
So everybody, what we're talking about it.
Yeah.
So they can get onto what? High blood pressure medication,
diabetes
diabetes
insulin,
medication,
yeah.
you know, all this stuff.
Heart
And it's
medication, blood pressure. I mean, it's endless. So Freedom Grow says, "Lol, it's hard. I love it though. To each their own." But though, of course, yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's awesome.
I'm sure it is, and I'm sure it's just a matter of like I'm sure the first time is like shock value, and then you do. It's like anything, you know. At first, it's like, wow, this is hard, but then but you know, I don't know. I don't think that's something that I really and truly want to do. But I'm glad you're enjoying it. And I'm glad it's working for you. TH Disaster joins us, and she says,
she goes, "You peeps look so young for your age. Lynna has beautiful Michelle Obama shoulders, and your energy is felt throughout the screen. I would love to see you two cook some of the meals you posted."
You know, we get a lot of requests for that, and to me, cooking is an art, and I kind of like get into the zone. It's almost like I leave, and I'm just like I can't even explain it.
You're in another world.
I'm in another world when I'm cooking because it's
almost like spiritual too.
Very much so. So it's like I have to have a camera in front of my face while I'm doing what I'm doing. I can't really. I don't know. It's like it doesn't seem to be fun for me. And I used to make videos when I was raw vegan and I was doing stuff, but it's such a production, and eating is so important to us. It's like our time. You know, I can't explain it. It's not something that I think that I could really, and we've done a few here and there, but it's like,
it would be nice to do it, you know, but it's like that time of the day is part of our day.
Yeah.
So we don't really have it. I guess we're just being selfish. We don't want to give our time up, you know, because it's, you know, I could throw a camera in your face and stuff, and, you know, maybe we'll try to do one in the future, but you've been making some really good food lately, though. I mean, you've been using this non-fat Greek yogurt for dressings, and it's a great base for
for everything. I mean, I use it to make guac. I use it to make any kind of salad dressing. It just thickens things up without the fat, because we buy the fat-free Greek yogurt. It gives density. It gives flavor. I love to play with flavors. You know, I really do. I flavors and, of course, healthiness. You know, everything that I make has a purpose and has a way of like burning calories and at the same time giving you nutrition. And again, it's because I get into this really deep place that is not just your typical follow recipe type of thing. It's like I go into my inner self, because I don't want to use the word higher self, into my inner self, and my inner self guides me. I do that with everything, how I train, how I, you know, it's like I listen in. Okay, I need to do what? Okay, so it's very deep and personal.
Yeah, I just leave you to do it. You know, because it's like you're like,
I'm in a zone.
I'm gonna make this, and I've got this idea. And the tomatoes are gonna be cut this way, and it's like, you know, it's like you're working.
Yeah, it's the same thing when I'm training. You know, it's like, okay, I put together, it's like, what circuit am I going to put together? I got, and it's almost like I'm like trying to like connect to my inner self, and it's like, oh, okay, this is how it goes. So Terry says, go ahead, read that.
A lot of weight and health issues are caused by deficiencies in common elements that used to be in every house, like iodine and magnesium.
Exactly. We are very much depleted in minerals and vitamins. First of all, the soil is horrible. Soil is being used over and over again, and it's not being replenished. A lot of these cellular towers and all these excessive neurological appliances that mess with your neurological system deplete your body from a lot of calciums and zinc and magnesium and things that people don't even think of, you know, because people are eating non-valued foods. They're eating foods that are empty, not only in calories, but empty in vitamins and minerals. So that's why we're getting so sick. You know, that's really, really sad. So we must engage in regular aerobic endurance exercise. Aerobic or cardio activity increases your metabolism while you're working out. We personally do a lot of interval training. Okay. So you're getting your weight training and you're getting your heart rate. I mean, our heart rate goes like that, but at the same time, you're also getting your resistive training. You're getting like it's a double whammy. You know, I love to run, but running eats away at muscle. So you've got it's a fine line. You don't want to eat away at your muscle. You know, you really want to continue to build that muscle. So by doing those interval resistive training where you're getting your heart rate up there, but you're engaging your core, you're engaging your flexors and your extensors and working your postural muscles and doing all sorts of things where the body becomes more efficient.
I feel like running is kind of like, mentally something that makes you feel like you're doing more than you're doing,
Exactly.
Because it feels like you're exerting so much energy. You're, you're sweating up a storm or whatever, and you're getting tired and everything, and you feel like you're really doing something.
Right.
But like we watched in that video before, that woman was doing these leg lifts, and she was doing them the wrong way.
Yeah.
But she could do them for a long time. She could get sweaty and hot with them, and it wouldn't change the body.
Exactly. The name of the game is body construction, changing your body composition. It's like taking a chisel and a hammer and chiseling your body out so that you can construct your body. Like I said, anybody could look good with clothes on and look like you've lost weight. But when you take your clothes off, how do you look? That's my expertise, making people look good with their clothes off.
But I think that, again, just touching on the running thing, is that I think it's like people think that they can just stop eating and then lose weight, and it's almost like people just start to go running out of like a knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, I need to do something. I better go run, and it's like, no, you can't do that.
You can't
do that.
You really have to. It's an art. It really is. As is cooking, as is training, as is, it's all an art.
There are some studies showing that you can continue to burn calories faster for a while after exercise, especially after higher intensity interval training.
Aerobic activity is any physical activity that uses large muscle groups and increase your heart rate. When you're performing an aerobic activity, you should be breathing slightly harder than you would at rest.
You should still be able to talk, but should be breathing a little faster than usual. How many people jump on a treadmill and they can't talk because they're breathing too heavily? And here's what happens, though, is that we think that we're doing something, but when we go past our target heart rate for burning calories, we're not doing anything but hurting ourselves.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah, it is. It's a fine balance. It really, really is. So build muscle.
Muscle blasts fat. Yay! Let's bring it on.
Yeah.
Strength training increases your muscle mass, which increases your metabolism overall.
Muscle is more metabolically active than fat and therefore burns more calories. The more muscle you have, the more calories you get to eat. It's an amazing thing.
1 pound of fat burns about 2 calories per hour. 1 pound of muscle burns about 35 to 45 calories per day.
As an added bonus, muscle takes up less room than fat. It's like a gold bar. You could have, and then if you have I remember Oprah did this thing where she walked out with a little thing and it had all this big amount of fat on it. I mean, you could weigh, it's like muscle is concise. Fat is kind of takes a lot of surface area. So do the math.
Right.
It's like, it's much, much more efficient. You're going to look better changing your body composition by losing the fat and building the muscle. Another thing is when people lose a lot of weight and they have a lot of dangling skin, you've got to know how to lose the weight, let it be coming from the right area, build that muscle so that You're not like a lot of people when they lose weight, they have all that dangling skin. If you build muscle and you're like really,
replaces
it
it.
replaces it, and you're not going to have all that skin dangling and stuff like that. All right, so
You know, there's people that are they're gonna swear to you about keto. They're gonna tell you that by eating all this fat and stuff and all this that they've done with keto, that they were able to lose this much flash amount of weight, you know, and
how do they look with their clothes off? That's the
right.
name of the game. You know, it's like you can't eliminate food groups. You need fat, but you need the proper kind of fat. We get our fats from avocado and almonds, you know, and then we buy our meats lean. We try to go with the leanest cut of meat possible because you don't want that saturated fat, you know.
And the more marble the cut is, you know, that's literally fat inside the meat. So that is going to get cooked and it's going to get, you know,
you're going to eat that, and that's going to give you osteosclerosis and all that stuff. So it's like, it's really knowing what you're putting in your body. So now that we spoke about the body, let's speak a little bit about empowering yourself. You know, 10 ways to empower yourself to create change in the world. I look at spirituality and I look at an essence of people doing good things for people. That's spirituality, not some dogma, not some religious cult, not some laws in some book that, you know, it's like people doing good things for each other, finding that right path of it's a fine dance.
Well, you've been in both circles, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So back in Silver City when you were back there years ago, how like was that community like compared to the recent community that you were part of? You know, those
totally
that
different.
were more spiritual, connected,
free flowing.
You know, one woman actually gave you, what was it like?
It was like a little it was like an arrowhead, but it was made out of crystal. It was given to her by a shaman, and spirit told her to get that she needed to give that to me, even though she didn't know me. She just walked out to me and gave it to me. Very different, very gentle, loving, you know, versus the religious bunch that
you got something from one of them too, and I think that one kind of got all faded out.
Yeah, it did.
Turned black.
Yeah, it did. So anyway, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And the same thing goes in the other coin. Never doubt that a group of angry, self-righteous, elitist, arrogant group of people could turn this world into disaster.
In the wake of what has been a steady stream of both human-made and natural disasters, many people have been left feeling that they just can't take it anymore. We may experience compassion fatigue, the deep exhaustion that comes from prolonged empathy, and feelings of powerlessness, anger, or frustration.
While these feelings are completely normal, they alone do nothing to create actual change. Our normal habits of sharing posts on social media, watching repetitive news reports, and complaining to friends can do a lot to further our feelings of anger and helplessness. However, they do very little for the betterment of ourselves and society as a whole.
So, this past year, I made a resolution. I will not complain about anything I'm not proactively doing something to change. For instance, I don't allow myself to complain about a political situation or social issue if I haven't first taken direct action, such as making calls to elected officials or volunteering to help with causes that are important to me. This practice has resulted in a profound paradigm shift, which now leaves me feeling like part of the solution rather than a victim of circumstance.
And what does the religious bunch do? They complain about everybody else's lifestyle, okay, pointing fingers, harming people, and always victimizing people.
Well, I mean, here's a really good kind of like litmus test for, you know, if your faith is really authentically effective. And that is, does your faith create stress in the person that you are sharing it with. If your faith creates stress in the person that you're sharing it with, you need to consider that faith that you're sharing is not authentic, because nobody needs to get more stress added to their life.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Worrying about doing this and that wrong and going to hell and whatever. I'm telling you, I feel freer than ever that I no longer profess to any God.
Absolutely do.
I mean, it's like the best feeling ever. So if we want to make a difference in the world, we need to create both the internal and external condition that will support us in making the biggest impact. Here are some important ways you can empower yourself to create meaningful change with both grace and strength. If you don't have a solution to a problem, don't go on pointing out the problem. Okay, because it's like, who wants that? You're bad. You're going to burn in hell. There's no, so, and then the solution, like, stop doing what you're doing. No, it doesn't work that way. People don't realize that you can't force people to live the way you want them to live or the way your sky daddy wants them to live.
Number 1, ground yourself. First of all, give yourself an opportunity to really experience your initial response. Take time to feel sadness, shock, grief, or whatever emotions may be arising. Feel love for those who are suffering, including yourself. Amidst this, invite feelings of safety and comfort, and stay connected to the deep sense of being that is always present inside of you, no matter what is happening in life.
Commit to a practice that helps you in touch with a grounded state of being, such as going for a walk in nature. We love that. Yoga, meditation, breathing exercises, or yoga nidra guided meditation. Take care to eat well and sleep soundly. You'll be more effective when you come from the central place. I love to sleep. To me, that is so important. Train hard, work hard, do whatever it is, but sleep is important. How many people out there don't get enough sleep? This is why you're running on empty. This is why you have to give yourself a ton of coffee all day. This is why you're not thinking properly. Sleep is so crucial.
What's funny is, like, yesterday after we took showers and stuff like that, you're like, it's bedtime. You just undo the bed and you hop in. You're like, are you ready for bedtime?
Yeah.
It's like,
to me, it's awesome, and especially
it's like a little kid.
Our little RV here, it's like a little cove, and it's like so snuggly, and we got the TV there, and it's like, we never ever finish watching anything because it's so comfortable. You start to watch, and it's like, I think we should turn the TV off. I know the TV has a timer. We should set that up. That way, we do fall asleep, we know it's going to get turned off.
Okay.
Maybe
we'll do that.
Yeah. So number 2.
Number 2, remember that feeling bad, quote unquote, about things doesn't change anything. While it is important to feel these events fully, we lose our power when we let feelings of sadness, anger, or fear replace our ability to act.
Remember that these feelings are messengers telling us that we want things to be different, that we want change. Acknowledge your feelings, listen to their message, and then let them empower you to make a difference. Don't just whine about things or complain all the time. If you know that there's no way of you changing something, let it go. I mean, we all want certain things in life, but we know we ain't going to get it, so why continue to pound on that?
Number 3, focus on issues that speak to your heart and do something about those. No one can do it all, so it is best to focus on 1 or 2 things you can do well, and then commit fully to your cause. Trust that you will be the best, what inspires your heart the most.
Then consider how you can best make a difference. Maybe you can give your time to directly help the situation. Alternatively, use your voice to educate others about a cause or make a monetary donation. The more you feel and see yourself making a difference, the more passionate you will be about continuing to create change.
We have a comment from online teacher Dude. Says, let people believe what they want, you do you, and let others do what they want.
Yeah, that's a great advice. Why don't Christians do that? You know, Christians pound the pavement, ministering to people, witnessing to people, getting to people's business. You know, here at Real Talk with the Cummings, it's a little corner of the world. We have our shows, we educate people, we talk about health, we talk about spirituality, and then we bring important topics that people need to hear. I don't care what you believe in. You could believe in the fairy godmother, which is very close, possibly, to what you believe now if you are a Christian, and maybe not. But yeah, I truly believe that people should mind their business and stop telling people they're going to go to hell, that they want them to not go to hell and not be in the lake of fire. That's good advice, online taker, or teacher dude.
And
Yeah.
he says, not all do.
The majority do. Christianity is known for that. You know, I don't know what kind of denial world you live in, but the majority of Christians do. They pound away. They pound away. Trust me, I felt the wrath, and they wouldn't leave me alone.
Still aren't.
Still aren't.
Number 4, avoid becoming overwhelmed. Be careful not to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. Focus on what you can affect and trust what other people will take care of the issues that matter to them. We're all in this together.
Also, take time to look at the positive outcomes from challenging situations, such as the way adversity can bring people together to make a difference. Sometimes our default is to focus on the negative things. In reality, billions of position things are happening at every moment. The Christian Crusades ring a bell. How many blood does Christians have in their hands? A ton.
Number 5, find community. Remember that we can do more together. Sometimes we are afraid to act alone, but when we harness the power of community, we are empowered by this connection and collaboration with others.
Find people devoted to your cause and build on the energy that comes from working collectively towards a greater good. Broadening your sense of community also helps with feeling of isolation and helplessness as you witness others' important contribution.
I think it's important also that we said something earlier in another podcast that basically was saying that we believed that we should stick to our own pack, is what I said, and not share our resources or ourselves with others and stuff like that. Well, what I mean by that, and to clarify, is that I know that we all have to live on this big blue planet together, right? And we all have to share its resources. We all live in this planet. We all have this to do, right? But it doesn't mean that I have to work hand in hand with the person that I am ideologically opposed to. I will find those that I can connect with, to be able to have community with. They will find their people and they will do the same. So I don't feel that I should coexist with everybody in the sense of working hand in hand together with everybody. I want to be with the people that are my people. I don't want to be with those people, because they don't do anything to benefit anything as far as my life goes.
Exactly. And Glenn Hackman says, how much blood do the indigenous people of the America have on their hands? I think you got the bloodshed situation a little mixed up there. How many indigenous people, to include our own native Caribbean tribes, that were massacred, by Columbus, and how much blood, and so you're just
talking about the Aztecs and what they did, or you're not thinking about what white settlers did when they came across the Atlantic and they took land away from people that it belonged to. As we celebrated Indigenous Peoples Day yesterday, because Columbus is not a word that needs to be mentioned on this planet, because all he did was destroy cultures. And the people that came after him, like Pizarro, Balboa, Cortez, and all those, were destructive completely.
And actually, that's a topic of a show that we could do, because there's been a lot of lies and history manipulation to make the indigenous people look like they were the ones that were, blood hungry, when it's just the other way around. But, right now we're in the middle of our show, and that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But we will be more than glad to present a show that will prove that it is not the indigenous people that has destroyed this world, this planet, and the way of life, but instead are the religious that have a lot of blood on their hands. And let's see here. Look at this up here.
Pontius Pilate described Jesus Christ in Washington, D.C. has that paper. Pontius Pilate was 5th governor of Rome, and his name is written in stone for historical purposes. Interesting. Ever heard of that?
Never heard of that. So let's continue where we're at here. Number 6. Was it me or you?
I was reading, but you go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Practice self-compassion, patience, and positive self-reflection. We often see only what we could have done or should have done better, which is discouraging and minimizes the importance of our efforts.
One of the most important parts of serving is to reflect on what you did and why it helped. This creates positive mental imprints and releases endorphins in the brain, increasing your chances of being proactive again in the future and improving your efficacy.
Exactly. Number 7, be resilient and avoid discouragement. If it's cultural change you're working for, remember that it doesn't happen overnight. There will be the harsh reminders that progress is not always linear. Remember that the adversity does not always denote a lack of progress. Progress takes time. Have faith that you're planting seeds that will ultimately blossom into positive changes.
Number 8, prioritize your time. We might often think we don't have enough time to help, when in reality, we do. Recognize that saying, I don't have time for that, is just a softer way.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Where is it? Oh, shoot. I was wanting to do this because I wanted to pull that person out. Softer way. I'm sorry.
A softer way. Sorry. Lost it.
Softer way of saying.
I don't prioritize that. Reflect on how you prioritize your time and make appropriate changes. Instead of going out for a drink with friends, try working together on a service project or fundraiser.
For example, you get to devote one night a week for cooking a meal for homeless youth. Create a new normal for your prioritization of time that includes time for selfless service. Okay, I wanted to address this. Your show would be better if you left Christianity out altogether. I'm not telling you what to do. Oh.
But you tell us that it would be better for us not to talk about Christianity, yet you're telling us that you're not telling us what to do. I don't understand that line of thinking. Look, the reason we talk about Christianity is because it is a cancer on the planet.
Total cancer.
A cancer. And we will speak truth to the situation that people find themselves in. If you don't agree, you have every right to go to any one of the hundreds of other thousands of Christian channels on YouTube and find your pack. This is not your pack.
Right.
If you are pro-God, pro-Jesus, pro-Christian, pro-believer, you don't want us. You don't want to be around us. You don't want to listen to what we have to say. And it would be better for you to go away instead of telling us what to do.
Exactly.
I personally was affected by Christianity.
As was I.
And I have nothing good to say about it. And I actually have found that it is a false belief system. Yeah. So I will speak about the false belief system that is Christianity.
Real talk with the Cummings. We talk it real. And this is what it's all about. You don't like what we're saying, you don't have to stay here. Simple as that. Okay, so next.
It was number 9.
Okay, so take care of yourself. Remember that you can't pour from an empty cup. Depleting ourselves of energy exhibits our ability to help others. Make sure you're leaving time for true self-nourishment. Identify and reduce or eliminate any activity that may seem relaxing, but are actually increasing your stress, like scrolling through social media or mindlessly watching television.
It's important to remain committed to the practices that keep you grounded. and connected to your true unchanging self, whether it's a spiritual practice, meditation, a sport, a walk in nature, or something else that speaks to your heart.
Number 10, remember the power of positive energy, meditation, and prayer. Prayer and meditation are proactive activities that can strengthen you, inspire you, and keep you peaceful in the midst of adversity. And when we speak about prayer here, we're not talking about praying to a god or whatever. It's almost like you're praying to your inner self. You're like asking your inner self to guide you, to help you, not some deity outside of you, but the inner guidance that we all have. We are creator gods after all.
The next time fears or worries arise, flood them with love, presence, and compassion. Remember, light always overcomes darkness in the end. Always.
So do you accept that challenge? Will you join us in not complaining about things that you aren't doing something about? Who else is going to do this essential work?
Look around you. Look in the mirror. It's us. We, you and I, you and me, we are making a difference.
Yeah, let's support each other in making the world the best that it can be, instead of sending people to hell, instead of like reading some book that has absolutely nothing to do with our times, instead of like pointing fingers and telling people what to do.
Although you're telling us not to do it.
Yeah, exactly. This is not an ideological concept. The world is changed by those who can feel the suffering and then show up to take action. And that's very important. And I find that religion lacks that. Religion just picks at the problem, hurts people, but
offers no solution.
None whatsoever. All they say, accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. That does what exactly? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing.
And now,
for the grand
purpose, the title of our program, which is called There Is No Evidence to the Story. And this is the greatest story ever told, is the story of Jesus.
And by gosh, there's so many different names and mythological characters that fit the same. I mean, I don't know.
Born of a virgin, 3 days in the grave.
Yeah. And it's so, but you know what? It's a romance. People, and you hear them. They're in love with this avatar.
Unhealthily, yeah.
Unhealthily. It's a very disturbing relationship. They don't even know it's not a religion, it's a relationship.
With what?
With what?
Yeah.
When I was 5, I used to have an imaginary friend. And I thought, yeah, my imaginary friend, kept me in company. But as I grew older, I realized imaginary friend was not real. We all have to grow up sometime.
And the thing is that, this belief system is in place only because the people who wanted it to be in place killed the other people that were promoting something else.
Exactly.
And they were the only ones in town. So it's just like what the conquistadors did to the native populations in the Americas.
Yep.
They killed their religions, their belief systems, and their people, so that there was no other option. There was no other option in Europe when the Druids were wiped out by St. Patrick in Ireland. Yeah. He was there and he wiped out all the Druids, right? All their way of living, their way of life, their belief in the planet and the stars and the moon and all of it was wiped out, so that the only people that remained were the Catholics.
Exactly. A lot of blood, and I don't want to blame the indigenous people. But Jesus, as we know him, the Jesus of Christianity, definitely did not exist. Most scholars do believe that Jesus was real, but the lack of evidence supports the idea that he was invented.
No historians of the first century mention Jesus, despite there being authors who write at length about Jewish concerns. There are no Roman records that mention Jesus. Not only that, but there are no Christian eyewitnesses of Jesus. All of the Gospels are anonymous and written by friends of friends. And, people have friends of friends on Facebook.
Yeah.
They're not really friends, are
No.
they? And none are written in the first person. Also, Paul, who authored 13 of the 27 books of the New Testament, never met Jesus except in a vision.
They're also written in very competent Greek, the language of later converts, rather than in Hebrew, the language of the original converts, excepting Paul. Early Christians didn't know when Jesus was born. His birthday wasn't decided for hundreds of years, and to this day they still don't have it right in 354 CE, and didn't know where he was buried.
People have doubted his existence since the very first century. And despite the popularity of Christianity, there is a modern resurgence of people who disbelieve in the very existence of Jesus today. And you met two of them tonight.
Yes, the biggest problem facing such unbelievers is accounting for early Christianity. But there are multiple theories as to how Christianity may have risen without historical savior. For example, it is quite possible, given the similarities of Jesus to previous savior religions and pagan stories about God men, that the entire story of Jesus is a rewrite with Jewish undertones of Roman and pagan myth that were current at the beginning of the first century. I think Terry said something.
She said, your thumbnail says, do you have proof? I came with proof. He was not God, but he was just as we are. He said we were gods and could do what he did. His only rule was love.
That's a very beautiful and romantic way of looking at it as well. And, there's the hardcore Christians and there's the, I like to call soft porn type of Christian.
No.
And I'm not soft. Well, not,
It's a little extreme.
well, it's like, soft type of, it's like kumbaya. And
no, it's like, people that want to keep Jesus in the midst,
Yeah.
because it's such a personal thing. They grew up with it. They believed in it.
Yeah,
They want to kind of
yeah.
like keep a semblance of it. Like I wanted that,
Mhm.
To keep that
Of course.
purity,
Jesus was
the
going to be
message
my
of
husband.
Jesus.
At one point, yeah. We will address, but let's get into this, Terry, and because we end up getting all over the place.
Well, she has something where she says, go
go ahead. What?
The first century Jewish historian Josephus is claimed to be far and away our best source of information about first century Palestine, mentions Jesus twice in his 20-volume history of the Jewish. Yes, that is something that you need to look at again, because in the original manuscripts of the writings of Josephus of Jewish histories, the Jesus accounts are not mentioned. If you look into the annotated version that came later, you will find this added later. Mm-hmm. It's like they added it to the manuscript.
It's an
just like in Luke and in other gospel writings, they have things that Jesus said in italics. It's like these things weren't spoken originally. So no, I would say Josephus did not mention it. Yet the Romans wanted Jesus mentioned because it was the religion of the empire.
That was, yeah.
So why would they not?
But let us, because
that?
we're going to get, this really has a lot of really important stuff. So Jesus has no history.
No history.
Mm.
I would say also, if there was no Nazareth, there is no Jesus.
Okay, but that's late.
But it's not. I don't think that's mentioned.
Right.
No primary source, no first-person accounts of Jesus exist. No historians of the first century mention Jesus. Suetonius, 65 to 135, you would think he would, does not. Pliny the Younger only mentions Christians, Paulists, with no comment of Jesus himself. There were Christians, but they themselves have only heard of Jesus and didn't know when he was born or where he was buried.
Later on, Tacitus mentions a Jesus, but it is likely that after a century of Christian preaching, Tacitus was just Tacitus was just reacting to rumors, or probably talking about one of the many other messiahs of the time. It's like Caesar. How many Caesars were there? It was almost like maybe it was a title given to rabbis of sorts.
Back then, the Jews were looking for a Messiah.
They were
looking for a Redeemer, someone who would set them free from the slavery of being under the Roman Empire, right? Although it wasn't a slavery, but they were under their thumb, right? So all these Jesus Messiah types were around. It wasn't like this one Jesus came around. It was like a Jesus was like an insurgent, a person who was like stirring things up, trying to cause problems with the Roman government. Josephus, a methodical, accurate, and dedicated historian of the time, mentions John the Baptist, Herod, Pilate, and many aspects of Jewish life in detail, but does not mention Jesus. The lack of evidence led a Christian in the 3rd century to forge the Testimonium Flavianum in the name of Josephus.
So let's see. I think she says some two other things there.
Oh, but this is the same thing.
The famous Testimonius Flavianus attributed to Josephus certainly did not appear in the edition of Josephus read by Origen in the early 3rd century. Eusebius quotes it as from Josephus, and it appears in manuscripts of Josephus copied after that time.
So that's what I was saying, that these things were added later. They weren't original. So she says, another account of Jesus appears in the Annals of Imperial Rome, a 1st century history of the Roman Empire, written around 116 AD by the Roman senator and historian Tacitus. And we just said Tacitus may have just read about legends and compiled it.
No proof, no real hard facts. It's hearsay. She says, he said. The story started off with being a little mountain like that. All of a sudden, it became this kind of mountain. That's all this is, folklore. Okay, so
there is no archaeological evidence of 99.9% of the people who have ever lived on this planet. It'll be very hard to prove you existed 2,000 years from now. Jesus was a peasant. I know you want to hold on to that, and you have every right to hold on to it. I know personally, as a person who grew up in a Christian home and was raised on the stories of Jesus and everything else, I wanted to believe in it. I really did. I held on until the last bit, which was this summer. And I realized that this was all just a farce, because Jesus is nothing more than a legend. It is a great romanticized story, and it was probably a created story by the Romans to enslave the population with a savior, God-man, like they did back before the Roman Empire. I mean, you had the stories of the Greeks and the gods of the Greek times, and the Zeuses and the Hercules and all these others, right? So
there's this book, and it's mentioned here in this article, Incredible Shrinking Son of Man. How reliable is the gospel tradition? Well, this book should be mandatory reading for all scholars concerned with Christian's origin. Nothing of comparable importance has been written for at least a decade. Freethinker for more than a century, scholars have been examining the Gospels and other traditions about the life of Jesus to determine their historical accuracy.
Although the results of these scholarly efforts are sometimes controversial, the consensus among researchers today is that the 4 evangelists' accounts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, cannot be taken at face value. In fact, a team of more than 100 scholars called the Jesus Seminar has come to the conclusion that on average, only about 18% of the four Gospels is even historically accurate.
An active member of the Jesus Seminar, Dr. Robert M. Price, presents the fruits of this important historical research in this fascinating discussion of early Christianity. As the title suggests, Price is none too optimistic about the reliability of the gospel tradition as a source of accurate historical information about the life of Jesus.
You know, the stories that are written about Jesus in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are really vague. They're not very detailed. The book of Mark doesn't even talk about Jesus as being, uh, born or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like these stories, they change, like one of them says one thing and then another one says another thing happened.
No
and
consistency.
And it's like these stories are written, and it's like, okay, so Matthew written by a tax collector, Mark written by a Roman wrote Mark. Luke, a Greek physician, wrote Luke. And John apparently was the only one that was credible, that Christians actually love the book of John over any of the other gospels, because they say, John, if you're going to read anything, you're going to read about the book of John, And that story doesn't even mention Jesus being born,
No, it doesn't at all. So,
indeed, he feels that his colleagues in the Jesus Seminar are much too optimistic in their estimate of authentic material in the Gospels. After an introduction to the historical critical method for non-specialists and a critique of the methods used by the Jesus Seminar, Price systematically discusses the narrative and teaching materials in the Gospel, clearly presenting what is known and not known about all of the major episodes of Jesus' life.
He also examines the parables for authenticity, as well as Jesus' teachings about the kingdom of God, repentance, prayer, possessions, and poverty, the atonement, and many other features of the Gospels, written for the general reading public in a lively and accessible style. Dr. Price's highly informative discussion will be of interest to anyone who has wondered about the origins of Christianity. And again, the name of the book is Incredible Shrinking Son of Man. How reliable is the gospel tradition? Not very.
The other thing that I wanted to mention is that some of the things that are attributed to Jesus speaking and, sharing, like the Beatitudes or, all these different stories that he's sharing and stuff, you will find some of these stories in legends in the books of the of the Hindu faith, of the Buddhists, these universal principles of the golden rule, do to others what you would want them to do to you. Those are not original with Christianity. Those are not original to Jesus saying it. Just because you see that Jesus gets the accolades and the, attaboys for saying these certain things, love your neighbor as yourself, doesn't mean that it wasn't spoken of before.
Exactly.
So
aside from that, Josephus does once mention a Jesus, but gives no information other than he is a brother of a James. Jesus was not an unusual name either. Just as another Jewish historian who lived in Tiberias near Capernaum, a place Jesus frequented according to the New Testament, did not mention Jesus nor any of his miracles.
It is only in the evidence of later writers writing about earlier times that we find a Jesus. Professor Ehrman, an expert in the prime sources of the first century, spells this out, quote,
"One of the striking and, to many people, surprising facts about the first century is that we don't have any Roman records of any kind that attests to the existence of Jesus.
We have no birth certificate, no references to his works or deeds, no accounts of his trial, no description of his death, no reference to him whatsoever in any shape or form. Jesus' name is not even mentioned in any Roman source of the first century. But as with the vast majority of all persons who've lived and died in the first century, he does not appear in the records of the Roman people." unquote. And this is the biggest thing, is that people think that it's so etched in stone, but why, if they wanted people to remember who Jesus was, why did they not describe what he looked like? Why did they not describe how he presented himself? Why didn't they not describe the color of his hair? Why didn't they not describe the color of his eyes and his face? And, why? I mean, why?
Because he wasn't real. Now, it would not be fair at this point not to mention that Professor Ehrman does believe in a historical Jesus. He says so and infers that the increasingly common denial of Jesus' very existence is disrespectable. He has a new book on the subject, Did Jesus Exist? 2012, where he lays out his argument, and in short, is the Gospel of Matthew that is most trustworthy. Ehrman is a critical thinker who is not at all hesitant to dismantle illusion in the research for truth. If he thinks that Jesus exists, then it is seriously worth considering his opinion. This page continues as an explanation of how Christianity can have arisen if there was no Jesus, regardless of whether or not he existed.
There were no Christian witnesses of Jesus. What is more surprising than the lack of first century evidence or references to Jesus is that the Gospels themselves do not allude to first-hand historical sources either. Quote, the four Gospels that eventually made it into the New Testament, and eventually means that they had to be looked at by the Roman government. The Caesar had to okay it and had to put his stamp of approval on it. Yeah. So, for example, are all anonymous, written in the third person about Jesus and his companions. None of them contains a first person narrative. One day when Jesus and I went into Capernaum, or claims to be written by an eyewitness or companion of an eyewitness.
Why then do we call them Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? Because sometime in the 2nd century, when pro-Orthodox Christians recognized the need for apostolic authorities, they attributed these books to apostles, Matthew and John, and close companions of Apostle Mark, the secretary of Peter, and Luke, the traveling companion of Paul.
Most scholars today have abandoned these identifications and recognize that the books were written by otherwise unknown but relatively well-educated Greek-speaking and writing Christians during the second half of the 1st century.
Ehrman kindly points out that Gospels were not forgeries written by unknown people. They were anonymous, and it was a case of false attribution. By Christians later on, that was the cause of the misdirection, which lasted many hundreds of years.
So none of the 4 Gospels are written by eyewitnesses. None. And the writings of Paul, which make up nearly half of the total books of the New Testament, 13 of the 27, are also the writings of someone who merely had a vision of Jesus, but who never met him. Okay, it's like Jesus existed apparently in Paul's day, yet Paul
never met him.
A guy who was raised to be like a high priest in training and stuff, and to be a Jew himself, and obviously would have been able to be a contemporary there with Jesus. He has no recollection of any memory of being there when Jesus was crucified on the cross. He has nothing to say. This very strange state of affairs indicates that something is wrong. Something is wrong with Christian history. And some academics have noted that this astonishingly complete absence of reliable gospel material tends to support the theory that there never was a historical Jesus, as Mark and I believe.
There is no evidence for the story of the birth of Jesus. The stories about Jesus' birth in the Bible are contained in the books of Matthew and Luke. These two accounts contradict each other in many places. Many elements are certainly untrue. There are no Roman records attesting to the birth or life of Jesus.
Events such as King Herod's killing of every male simply did not occur. It did not occur. None of Herod's enemies mention it. Would you think that killing every baby in Bethlehem would be mentioned in annals of history? Wouldn't that be an atrocity?
Yeah, it would have.
For example, despite none of the Herod's enemies mention it. For example, despite their routine documenting of his many misdeeds of a much lesser nature. Also unhistorical is the curious Roman census that required for what reason everyone to go to cities associated with their ancestors.
But similar stories are found about previous pagan god-man saviors, likewise with the virgin birth, which has now been shown to simply be a mistranslation deriving from the Septuagint. And what of the three wise men who followed the bright star to Jesus' birthplace, bearing gifts?
Other stargazers of the time who meticulously recorded many stellar...
What happened here?
I get to it.
Yeah. Okay.
Many stellar...
I don't know why it's doing this.
Just hit X on it.
Okay.
Other stargazers of the time who meticulously recorded many stellar events did not notice it. It is a Zoroastrian story, even down to the details of the three gifts copied by Christians and made to be about Jesus. The stories of Jesus' birth are rewrites. That's right, plagiarism.
Yep.
Modernizations of previous stories from older pagan myths. These facts have led some scholars to cast doubt on Jesus' entire existence. And why would it be important for a person to be born in Bethlehem, the son of, calling him the son of Joseph, right?
Mm-hmm.
When his line had nothing to do with Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he was born of a virgin, that would mean that his father's seed, the side of his father, was not from Joseph. It was impregnated by the Holy Spirit.
Right.
So why would that even be important for him to be born in Bethlehem?
Exactly. There is no evidence for the story of the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus, and you would think that would be very important.
No evidence.
No evidence. The crucifixion story of Jesus Christ is mythical, based on pagan religions, and makes no sense. As a matter of fact, even Christians can't even agree on that. The Jehovah's Witnesses believe he died on a stake, like this. The Christians believe he died this way. So, I mean, even between the different types of Christianity, they can't even agree on how he died.
Well, the fact of the matter is that back in the time of Jesus, back in the Roman Empire, over in Jerusalem at that time, the way that the Romans crucified people was they impaled them on a stake. Yeah. And they didn't put them up on a picturesque overlooking view of the city on three crosses,
no Calvary,
one pointed up on higher than the other. No, this was like absolutely really degrading to the person who would have to experience it. They were hung naked. They were thrown onto the street, impaled with 100 or thousands of others that lined the streets down the road. I mean, it was nothing like what Christians say. Yeah. There was no three crosses stood on Calvary Hill.
That's some
Crucifixion Day. I mean,
it's made for TV movie.
It's a wonderful movie.
Yeah, there is a complete absence of evidence for the events described. No author mentioned the phenomenal events that supposedly occurred at the time of Jesus' resurrection, and there are no records of Jesus being crucified in the first place.
This is despite there being multiple historians of the time who kept extensive records of events in that era, especially of unusual events like an earthquake or something, right? And the misdeeds of rulers. The only records we have are those written by Christians themselves. St. Paul's letters are the earliest, but he didn't even meet Jesus. And then even the earliest Gospels show strong signs of being mythological. Within each of them, nearly all details of the crucifixion and resurrection are different. Very important details, such as Jesus' last words, are so different that it appears they are simply being made up. The earliest Christians did not know simple details such as where Jesus was buried.
Most the details of Jesus' death and rebirth are similar to the existing myth surrounding God-man in that era. The similarities to the Christ of other pagan religions are shockingly detailed, so much so that early church fathers had to defend themselves against pagan critics who said that the story of Jesus were simply pagan stories with new names.
And this goes
Plagiarism.
along the same line as what Constantine did. He took these shrine, buildings that had spires on them, and the pagans worshipped in them and stuff, and he repurposed them and turned them into basilicas and Roman Catholic, like shrines and stuff like that. I mean, they continue to do this where they take the story and they repurpose it. They take the God-man story and they turn it into the savior of the world, right? Where did the stories about Jesus come from? The New Testament. Quote, the hundreds of documents about Jesus, all contradictory in style and content, derived from multiple physical locations. The disparate stories, all of which use pagan and Roman myths interwoven with typical Greek God-man stories, hint to us that the entire escapade is the result of historical revisionism.
It looks like we're frozen. It's weird. Okay, so the hundreds of documents of Jesus, all contradictory in style and content, derive from multiple physical locations. The desperate stories, all of which use pagan and Roman myths interwoven with typical Greek God-man stories, hint to us that the entire escapade is a result of historical revisionism. In other words, stories about Jesus spread as a result of a single preacher, perhaps St. Paul, who never met Jesus and probably never really met the disciples, and people merely in typical fashion for the era who wrote older stories but now put Jesus at the core of them.
We're kind of messed up.
Let me see here. No, we're going. It's your computer. Because it's still there.
Computer?
Yeah, it's probably the stuff because
there's no stuff
there.
Okay,
so I lost myself now. The 100. Did I say that right?
We could ask people if they're
okay.
Are they seeing this?
Yeah, right. I have it going live right now. Do you guys hear us okay? Because Lynna's computer's not picking up the stuff, but I see it here. So yours was kind of like going slow.
Yeah, this is not something that happens.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, I guess if the show must continue here.
That's where were we? And people merely in typical fashion. Okay. The hundreds of documents about Jesus, all contradictory in style and content, derive from multiple physical locations. The desperate stories, all of which use pagan and Roman myths interwoven with typical Greek and God-man stories, hint to us that the entire escapade is the result of historical revisionism. In other words, stories about Jesus spread as a result of a single preacher, perhaps St. Paul, who never met Jesus and probably never really met the disciples, and people merely in typical fashion for the era rewrote older stories but now put Jesus at the core of them, just as happened with other Roman gods and heroes.
Hence, a new religion sprung out of thin air, fooling many into thinking there was an actual historical figure. Once this process had started at the end of the first century, it was already impossible for anyone to go back and verify the stories. Bruno Bauer believed Mark had invented Jesus. Just as Mark Twain created Huck Finn.
Jesus was a Jewish Messianic cult leader, a very common belief accepted in part, if not in full, by Christian liberals is that someone who claimed to be a prophet and Messiah, there were many such people appearing amongst the Jews, is the historical Jesus. His life story has been intermingled with older pagan myths, and it's very hard for us to see his true life or message to the extent that we have little or no information about him. He is effectively without historical basis because the real figure is obscured by the mythical one.
God-man myths were very popular and predated the God-man of Jesus by thousands of years. They all shared a common format, which, or vegetation myths, quote unquote, is that the Son of God has 12 disciples and is betrayed and killed by a traitor. Popular myths such as the virgin birth, miracles, curing the blind and ill are also familiar and common aspects of these myths. As such events were assumed to be true of the historical Jesus.
These myths became interwoven amongst the stories of someone who might have been real. Many Jewish sayings became attributed to this character in saying of John the Baptist too. Stories about the disciples were assumed to be true and not simply symbolic stories as the original Gnostic Christians believed. Once people wrote pseudepigraphically under the names of the disciples, people accepted them as true too. The rest is history. But initially, is based on mistaken pseudo-historical accounts.
The Jewish mysteries hypotheses. Jesus was another mystery religion God-man. Perhaps the most historically correct of all the theories is that Christianity started out with a Gnostic character, but that it lost this form the 2nd century onwards. The stories of Jesus and the disciples match those of other mystery religions and pagan religions precisely because Christianity was another mystery religion.
Literalist Christianity, as we know it, was the outer mystery of the spiritual religion. It explains why the historical centers of Christianity were found to be all Gnostic when literalist Christians went back to research the past and why so many pagan godman elements are part of Christianity. It's like if anyone's ever watched Zeitgeist or similar documentaries, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that Jesus is just another mythological character.
It also explains why none of the scholars of the time mentions Jesus or the miracles around his life, because even the Christians themselves knew that there were symbolic stories. They were symbolic stories, not actual events. It's not just Jesus, though. A surprisingly large number of religious figureheads, including both the Mesopotamian heroes and even the Buddha, have a tendency to conform to a certain stereotypical set of qualities.
The stories told about these heroes have similarities, such as the final battle with an arch enemy, which revolves when the heroes cleverly choosing words to destroy Mara or Satan accordingly. Karen Armstrong holds that these elements of the hero career come to us from the Paleolithic era. Later Christians had to be defend their new religion against critics who knew it was yet another copy of the typical Son of God Savior religion of the time.
Quote, the hero tales of the world abound in heavenly annunciations, miraculous conceptions, portents at birth, child prodigy stories, divine commissionings, devilish temptations to leave the ordained path, miracles gaining and losing the approbation of the crowd, literal or figurative coronation, betrayal, execution, often on a hilltop,
Yep.
resurrection or disappearance, or ascension into heaven. We have all three.
Yep.
Post-mortem appearances, and so forth.
As Martin Debelius pointed out, such miracles always seem to punctuate the life story of saints and heroes in order to cast a halo over their every moment. The gospel comes under serious suspicion because there is practically nothing in them that does not conform to the mythic hero archetype. No leftover secular information such as we do find in the case of real historical characters of the era, which serves to tie them into the fabric of history.
Some features of the story of Jesus kind weight to the idea that his story was invented and modeled on previous heroes. Like other heroes, he had no childhood. There was a mythical birth story and a short adult life of wonder and miracles, but there was no infant Jesus and no child Jesus, except one particular story of Jesus when he was 12, Luke 2:41 through 49. But this particular story happens to merely be a rewriting of older stories about his heroic and often divine heroes who, at that very age, had a single story told about them too.
Where were Jesus' parents? They are rarely mentioned and are only a nuisance. Christians never found out when Jesus was born. Early Christians debated for 100 years about what date to celebrate Jesus' birthdays on. And they also didn't know where he was buried. They still don't. Did not convert to Christianity speak to Jesus' parents? Did convert. Okay. And didn't they pass or on any story about young Jesus? Jesus died young, leaving many adults a long time to investigate him and write about him. So that massive gap in mundane knowledge about him is very worrying.
The Jesus story sure looks like you would expect it to look if it were patterned after other godmen. Early Christian church fathers such as Justin Martyr, 165 CE, Tertullian, 225 CE, and Irenaeus, 202 CE, felt compelled to answer the pagan critics of the time who claimed the Jesus story was based on earlier traditions. The fathers claimed that the similarities were the work of the devil, who copied the Jesus story ahead of time to mislead the gullible.
Isn't it funny how they always blame the devil?
Always the devil.
It's always the devil for everything. It's like, here's the book, God, the Failed Hypothesis, how science shows that God does not exist. Throughout history, arguments for and against the existence of God had been largely confined to philosophy and theology, while science had sat on the sidelines, despite the fact that science has revolutionized every aspect of human life and greatly clarified our understanding of the world.
Somehow the notion has arisen that it has nothing to say about the possibility of a supreme being, which much of humanity worships as the source of all reality. This physicist and author contends that if God exists, some evidence for this existence should be detectable by scientific means, especially considering the central role that God is alleged to play in the operation of the universe and the lives of humans, treating the traditional God concept as conventionally presented in the Judeo-Christian and Islamic traditions like any other scientific hypothesis.
Stranger examines all of the claims made for God's existence. He considers the latest intelligent design argument as evidence of God's influence in biology. He looks at human behavior for evidence of immaterial souls and the possible effects of prayer. He discusses the findings of physics and astronomy in weighing that suggestion that the universe is the work of a creator and that humans are God's special creation. After evaluating all the scientific evidence, Stenger concludes that beyond a reasonable doubt, the universe and life appears exactly as we might expect if there were no God. And this book is called God, the Failed Hypothesis, How Science Shows that God Does Not Exist. So,
other religions of the era placed local gods and heroes at the center of common stories. The Babylonian legend of creation has come to us through history, preserved in a number of tablets. The main object of these tablets, according to historian Wallace E.A. Budge, was the glorification of its central hero, Marduk, who conquered the dragon Tiamat. He continues to show evidence that it was common practice for local communities to tell these stories, but to place their own local gods and heroes in the most heroic positions in these stories.
Let me see if we have anybody saying anything here. No. Okay, I should just say I hear you. It is probable that every great city in Babylonian, whilst accepting the general form of creation legend, made the greatest of its local gods the hero of it. It has long been surmised that the prominence of Marduk in the legend was due to the political importance of the city of Babylon. And we now know from the fragments of tablets which have been excavated in recent years by German astrologists or Assyriologists at Kalet Sharkat or Shargat or Sharat, that in the city of Ashur, the god Ashur, the national god of Assyria, actually occupied in texts of the legend in use there the position which Marduk held in 4 of the legends current in Babylonian.
There is no reason for thinking that the original hero of the legend was Enlil, Bel, the great god of Nippur, the Nefar or Nufar of the Arab writers, and that when Babylon rose into power under the first dynasty, about BC 2300, his position in the legend was usurped at Babylon by Marduk.
The relevance to Jesus is that it appears that exactly the same process has occurred. Many existing God-man hero stories had been told for some time, and the generation of version with Jesus at the center was merely the latest popularist twist to emerge from tradition of the dying God-man motif.
This trend of changing a story as it is told has been captured by the New Testament itself in a way that the Gospels have tended to expand and edit stories, each adding its own highly characteristic twists and turns to the original stories. Robert Price identifies the trend by which over time stories told by believers get more complicated and more involved, with more detail appearing over time. Here I quote just a small extract from Price's text on the topic, including one example.
Take the important story of Peter's confession of Jesus' messianic identity of Caesarea Philippi. Our earliest version has Jesus solicit Peter's opinion. You are the Christ. Mark 8:29. Luke modifies the title accorded Jesus. You are the Christ of God. 9:20. A simple clarification that anointed of God.
Matthew wants a beefier Christology, so his Peter says, a mouthful, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. 16:16. Added, it's like it turns into like a Greek tragedy play. There is clear development from a lower Christology to a higher one. Thus, if any version is most likely to be historical, it is surely the earliest and simplest, the least theologized.
The theological and historical details in the New Testament text prove the Bible authors were rewriting the details, making them up, and embellishing them. The no Jesus thesis is, of course, that there was no underlying story. The entirety of Jesus' life is retelling of older myths, rewarded and rewritten for new readers. How much more do we have here?
It's okay.
No.
We have a long show. We gotta get through the article.
Okay, so what did I leave off here? New readers.
History led up to Christianity. Elements common to all types of the Christian religion that were common in previous pagan mystery religions include much of the religious content of Christianity. All elements of Jesus' life, such as the events around the birth, death, and ministry, were already parts of the myths surrounding other God-men of the time. Peripheral elements such as there being 12 disciples were similarly present in other more ancient religions, and sometimes with an astonishing amount of duplication. First century critics of Christianity voiced accusations that Christianity was nothing but another copy of common religions.
I'm going to try because we got 15 minutes before 8 o'clock. I'm trying to see here what's the most. For those of you that watch Zeitgeist, there are so many God men, that duplicate the same exact character, right? Starting out life as an immensely useful number for counting and dividing things, the number 12 became a number revered by mathematicians and early astronomers. What did he have? 12 disciples, right? So the skies were divided into 12 portions, as were the months of the year, reflecting the annual movement of heavenly bodies. Superstition and religious beliefs were piled on top of respect for the number 12 and was adopted by multiple early civilizations. The sky divided into 12 has each portion ruled by a personification, a god, a divine being, a teacher, a prophet, or a son of the sun.
Odin of Norse mythology sat on a chair that overlooked all of creation and had 12 sons. The Babylonians had the longest lasting influence upon our calendars, timekeeping, mathematics, and religions, all of which emphasize the number 12. The Babylonians' most ancient myths defined zodiacs, where each portion was ruled by a different god, some good, some evil. Pseudoscientific enterprises such as astrology have the number 12 at its core. The ancient Zoroastrians had 12 commanders on the side of light, light being a symbol for the sun, and in Judaism and in the Hebrew scripture, there are many references to the 12 tribes of Israel, and later on the Greeks imagined 12 gods on the Mount Olympus.
So basically what it's saying is that they've taken astrology, literally, and have created this whole wonderful romanticizing tale.
They've taken the number 12,
Yeah.
and it's common to many things.
So here's, I think Zeitgeist kind of explains this. The sun dies for 3 days on December 22nd, the winter solstice, when it stops in its movement south to the born again or resurrected on December 25th, when it resumes its movement north.
In some areas, the calendar originally began in the constellation of Virgo, and the sun would therefore be born of a virgin.
The sun
Virgo.
The sun is the light of the world.
The sun cometh on clouds, and every eye shall see him.
The sun rising in the morning is the savior of mankind.
The sun wears a corona, crown of thorns, or halo.
And notice the sun that we're talking about is not S-O-N, but the S-U-N, walks on water.
The sun's followers, helpers, or disciples are the 12 months and the 12 signs of the zodiac, or constellations through which the sun must pass.
The sun at 12 noon is the house of temple of the Most High. Thus he begins his father's work at age 12.
The sun enters into each sign of the zodiac at 30, hence at 30 degrees, not 30 years. Hence the Son of God begins his ministry at the age 30.
The sun is hung on a cross, crucified, which represent its passing through the equinoxes, the verbal equinox being Easter, at which time it is then resurrected. Folks, it's clear as day, that this is all a story, a storytale, a story, a full story, a romanticizing story, though, because like you said, we all want to believe. From the time we're little, we're told about this baby Jesus, and Jesus died for us and he loves us. And
don't take Christmas away.
It's like,
don't take Christmas away from me, right?
Right.
That's what we would say.
Yeah.
Who were the first Christians, though? Well, whether or not Jesus existed, we know for a fact that Christians exist. By finding out about the earliest forms of Christianity and looking at the earliest Christians, we can see how even if Jesus existed, Christianity as we know it is certainly not how it was meant to be.
Oh, so you have the Ebonite Christians, were the true Christians, Aramaic speakers like Jesus and his apostles. They would have been the Jewish witness to Jesus' ministry and preaching. From this starting point, Jesus' teaching spread. They also, however, spread from Saul and Damascus, who renamed himself Paul and who preached as an anti-Ebionite version of Christianity for the Gentiles, which was much more easier to follow and more popular. What I want to say here, it's almost like you had these people that were mystics. They were going against the times. They created this God-man to fit their views, basically.
Well, I think that there was something to be said about the legends that they were telling, like if they did write stories about Jesus, and those people that existed at that time knew that this wasn't truly a story of a man.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the story of a Jesus a little baby being born, but it was more of a, like spiritual connotation, and the ability for people to go inward, to understand things at a deeper level than just physical,
Right.
And I think that those stories, the crucified Christ and all that, they probably meant something different to those people at that time.
Yeah.
Gnostic Christians with stories, myths, and beliefs that are exactly the same as Christian ones in many of the little details. Gnostics' beliefs managed to predate Christians' ones by over 200 years. They understood what the stories of the New Testament really meant. Jesus didn't really exist, but was a collection of such earlier stories rewritten in Greek with Greek names. This is the approach taken by historians such as Frick and Gandhi. So that's what I was saying, is that they understood, they had an understanding. See, what the Romans did in creating their Roman Christianity, Roman Catholicism, was to wipe away that old foundation of that it was more, what is it? The word when someone is not like literally worshiping something, but it's more of what was it? It's like looking for the deeper things, looking for the occult meaning, the hidden truth.
Occult.
No, but it was something else. It was something that was expressed, but only those that wanted to find the
Mysticism.
truth. That it's a different
Gnostic.
It's another word. It escapes me, but it was like these teachings were there, but they were only for those who wanted to find truth. The
like secret society
deeper,
type of thing. Yeah.
The deeper meaning.
And then you have the Gnostic Christians who, with stories, myths, and beliefs that are exactly the same as Christian ones, and many of the little details Gnostic belief managed to predate Christians one by over 200 years. They understood what the stories of the New Testament really meant.
I just read that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
okay, so Pauline, Roman Christians, when the Roman-backed instances of Christianity went in search of the ancient center of Christianity, they discovered to their horror that Ebionites and Gnostic predated them. Can you imagine that? Their unchristian answer was to edit verses, burn books, arrest and harass the other poverty-stricken Christians until no opposition was left. Isn't that how it's been? The form of Christianity that was inherited from the Roman Empire is far from what Christianity original was. All I have to say is there is, 40,000 different types of denomination? That should speak volume right there. Folks, you're giving your power away. Jesus did not exist. The God that you worship in the Bible is not legit. It's some power hungry, call it reptile, call it archon, call it whatever you want to call it. It's time for you guys to wake up, really get with the program, understand that there is criticalness in your awakening right now. No one wants to keep coming back to this recycled soul pit.
Terry, I understand that you want to hold on to Jesus, and hold on as long as you want to hold on to him. I mean, it's wonderful to have those wonderful warm feelings, thinking that he does exist. But just like Mark and I were talking about, and this has nothing to do with what you just said, but there was a day when I was a child and you were a child, when our parents kind of screwed up and they told us that Santa wasn't real.
I found out because my retarded uncle had gotten into the box of my bike and made a hole. And when I came home from school that day and I saw the closet door open and I went in and I saw his box and I saw a wheel, I'm like,
yeah, but my parents had a way of covering that up because
they tried.
They would say, "Oh no, that's not Santa's gift.
He didn't have room to keep it.
No, that's not Santa's gift. That's our gift to you."
Yeah, no.
Santa's gift is coming. So they put themselves.
Well, that was a big one, the bike. So it was like Santa didn't have room in the, and right away
on the
sleigh. I'm like, oh man.
But every story, if it's not true, I'd rather understand the truth than to continue to believe in something that's not really authentic.
Let me boil this all down. okay, Jesus died on the cross for our sins, right? Our sins that we had absolutely nothing to do with because eating of a forbidden fruit. I mean, even that story in of itself seems very bogus. He said he was going to come back quickly. How long has it been? There is no Jesus to be found. The fact that there's no historical evidence, the fact that it's all mythology. But the clear fact of today, would you not think that by now, with all the things that have happened on this earth, with all the suffering, that this so-called God man would have returned? People want to hold on. It's like it's such a romance. People just want to be taken away and held and loved and told this, that, and the other. It is not real, people.
Well, they'll tell you until everyone hears. Then
So what
until
happened?
the gospel is preached to every
Of course.
creature.
Of course.
Right?
It's never-ending
Then the end
story.
will come.
Be a never-ending story. Because that's how they continue to make big bucks and get bigger and bigger. And, like a cancer, just trying to invade every host. It's a lie, folks. It's a lie. There are bigger things that you need to learn and grow from. You need to leave the little baby Jesus behind. You need to realize that we are the ones we have been waiting for. No Jesus, no God-man, no Yahweh, no Jehovah. We are the ones that need to wake up from this sleepy state and make things happen.
The important thing to know is that you will find the truth if you look for it, and it is work to do that. It is not easy to do this work. It takes researching it. It takes working through your own preconceived ideas, your own preconceived teachings, and how you've been raised, to work through all that stuff. And it comes down to personal responsibility. It comes down to the fact that no one is going to save me. Mm-hmm. I need to fix it myself.
Exactly. And she says, I do not think Jesus is not a God-man any more than we are. It's a title. It's like saying Caesar. There have been many different types of Jesuses or the Christ that have tried to wake people up, but is not the Son of God. He didn't die on the cross to save us from our sins. The story became romanticized dramatically. It's a massive story, the greatest story ever told, the greatest lie ever told.
Well, the thing is that this lie has been told to other generations. I mean, we're just like the latest iteration of human, mm-hmm. right, to have to hear it, mm-hmm. Because you got to remember this culture of Christianity that we've been living in is roughly 2,000 years old. The world is much older than that. There are civilizations that have lasted longer than that. I mean, the Chinese look at us and they laugh because they think our culture is so backwards. It's so like, we're so young and we're so dumb.
I know. And that's the same concept with the Christian religion. It's the youngest, dumbest. It's like, to me, it's like the religion to bring in the New World Order type of thing. And it's just, people have to realize what's going on. They have to take responsibility. No more raising your hand up and saying that you want to get fixed and helped and whatever else. You have got to do the work. And like we read in the spiritual part of the show, it takes a community to change things. It doesn't take one God-man, one savior. It takes a community of people to change things in the world that you live in. Every cell, it's like as above, so below. We all play an important role in what needs to happen.
Again, you have your opinions, you have your beliefs, you have your way of thinking, and you want to hold on to certain things. That is all up to you. I mean, we're not telling you what you should believe, how you should believe, why you should believe, but we're just saying that from our own educational, our own experience.
Right.
I had thousands of hours of Bible college training. I learned a lot. I worked in Christian ministry. I saw Christianity from the inside out. I had a personal relationship, quote unquote. I spoke in tongues, quote unquote. I did all the things that a Christian was supposed to do. Yet when I did those things, I found nothing but emptiness. I found nothing but just a real dull sense of being, And when I realized that it was me that needed the fixing, that it was me who needed to do the work, it wasn't me going to an altar, it wasn't me going to baptize myself underwater, it wasn't all this symbolic eating of my flesh and drinking my blood. It wasn't any of that got me to the place of peace that I am at now. Now I'm at peace with myself, more so than I've ever been.
Yeah.
Our lives are much better without Jesus in it.
Big time better. I thought I just shared. Did I not share the?
Terry says, I totally agree that the religion of Christianity is evil. Jesus did not start a religion. He tried to wake people up to the lies of the church of his time. Honestly, you can believe that if you want to, and you can hold on to your legend if you want to. But I will not hold on to something that makes me serve it or its father. I have no father to serve. I have no deity to serve. I am a divine being, a conscious energy, eternal energy that has the ability to create on my own. I do not need to give my power away to Jesus, to God, to the Father, the Mother, or any other deity. Anything that makes me serve it is sucking life from me. And I don't want that.
Yeah. There have been many great men and women that have walked this earth that have tried to wake humanity up. Jesus, or the person that may have had that name, is no different than any of those that have walked this earth. But this whole Jesus God man, Jesus the Son of God, Jesus the Savior, that's all BS. That's just a storyline,
Yeah. And what I was alluding to earlier is that I had the opportunity to travel to Israel 2 times in my life. And on one of the trips, we were going to go see Nazareth. And Nazareth, I was told by our tour guide, did not even exist as a city at the time of supposedly when Jesus existed.
Right.
So they call him Jesus of Nazareth, yet his little town of Nazareth didn't even exist. So this is my rule of thumb. If there is no Nazareth, that would equal no Jesus. Because why would they mention that he was from Nazareth if Nazareth didn't even exist? It doesn't make sense. And this whole Jesus story, it doesn't make sense either. And I'd love to believe it. Really, Christmas is a lot more fun when you believe in the little baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and the angels singing and the little, the story and the plays going on at local churches with the passion, not the passion plays, but the birth plays and all that, and the birth of Jesus and all that, the wise men and all that.
Personally, that's so boring to me because it's like year after year after year repeat.
Yeah, but little kids dressed as little sheep and shepherds, and it's so innocent and cute and sweet. But the fact is that little plastic Jesus in the story is just about as real as your true Jesus of Nazareth.
And she says Christmas is a pagan ritual, and so is Christ, is a pagan mythological, and she states here, we
are supposed to serve each other. We are gods. We are to love each other.
I agree with the part that you said that we are gods. As far as love each other, that word gets thrown around so much. What is love?
Yeah, how do you love each other?
I mean,
I love you.
Yeah.
I mean, in a erotic sense, obviously, because we are very much attracted to each other. but I love you. I'm invested in your life. I'm given to you.
Yeah.
I'm like, my life is a part of yours.
Right.
So love is like an interactive thing. I don't know how we can love anything that we don't interact with.
Right.
I mean, talking to people online, that's not love. I mean, that's being nice. That's, finding commonality, finding connection in similar, things, but that's not love. Love is rare.
Right.
Love is a very,
it's a diamond. It's like trying to find a diamond in the pile, and it's hard, and people just throw it around. And again, love is also used as a religion, as a way of trying to like bring people in. We have to be very mindful. This is a self journey. This is a spiritual growth. The whole concept of this new age oneness, and that again is just another tool in the tool chest, another way of grabbing us. They'll get you whichever way. They don't get you with the Jesus, they'll get you with the new age belief, they'll get you with this, they'll get you with that. Anything to take away your power, and anything to not let you realize who you are and what you're doing here. It's self work. It's a self journey, evolution of your spirit, of what you need to learn and do.
and that could have been the whole message, within the Gospels and things, was that this is something that you do, that is something that is your responsibility. Like you used to say, greater things than I do will you do, and it's all within you. The kingdom of God is within you, and all that. And those higher principles, those esoteric, that's the word I was looking for. Those esoteric teachings and things that that are hidden gems that people don't really like understand by just reading a story. Because you could write a book out, and all you have to do is just change some words, and you can make it sound like something different, which is what the biblical writers did. That's what the people who adjusted the Bible, and stuff, and the words, they did that, right? So they made it sound like whatever people wanted it to, the government at the time wanted it to sound like. So in Paul's writings, he talks about, being faithful to the government, and serving, being loyal to the king, and all this, and slaves obey your masters, and all this. Why would they say that? It's because it promotes the empire. It promotes the Roman authority. It gives them power. And what greater power is there than to put it into some sacred, quote unquote, sacred text, and make it the words of God, that you're supposed to give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and give unto God what's God's, so.
And I hear you, Terry. It's all, again, very romanticizing and very beautiful in theory. Try to love everyone, agape love, that you make contact with. And yes, we all need to be better humans. We all need to not just think of ourselves, but again, that word love is also a way of the new age, the religions, to be able to grab a hold of people. They'll get you with one way or another. This whole kumbaya spiritual feeling, that people feel. It's beyond that. If you feel it, it's not a spiritual thing, because it's not meant to be felt that way. It's beyond human understanding, put it that way. It's work that we have to do, that is not something that is palatable, that is not something that you feel. It's not something you could put in a biblical book. It's not something that you could create mantras or chants with. It's deeper than that, and we as humans still have not understood it, or many have not. So anyway, guys, it's late.
Yeah.
And we've been going on since 6 o'clock. I hope that today's show gave you something to think about. I put the link there. I don't see it. Let me do it again to see. That was the link of the article that we read.
There it is.
There's tons of books that have been written, tons of information out there. Everything is not black and white like most of us wish it could be. It's deeper. There's no words to try to really explain it. There really isn't.
There's there's so much more to this. And I mean, we've just barely touched the surface on this issue, on this topic. And, I'm sure we'll talk about it in the future as we get more information and stuff like that. But it's just important to have an open mind, because that's the key to growth, is to be able to have an open mind. If you don't have an open mind and all you have is your set belief system, you'll get about this far, because those set belief systems are like, it's like when we go to the gym and we're on that machine that does the squats and stuff, or anything else like that. And they put like a lock on it to protect you from it falling down on you. Well, if you put that lock there, you can't bring the bar down any lower.
No, of course.
It's set there to protect you, but also to limit you.
Right.
So what these set belief systems do is they limit you and your potential. You're supposed to be unrestrained. You're supposed to let the locks off, drop them down, and do everything that you want to do and more.
If you think about it, Terry, all this stuff that you're saying, it's something that you've heard from someone, some video, some book that you've read. The majority of our thinking doesn't even come from us. It comes from programmable people outside of us that put those thoughts there, and we make them our own. If we really want to learn something, we have to go deep within ourselves to really find those answers. We can't find it in books. We can't find it in YouTube videos. And you really have to do the soul work. There's a lot of work. It's deep. We have to really understand, what is love? They tell us you're supposed to love your mother and your father. Well, what if you don't love your mother and your father? What if your mother and father weren't people that were good for you in your life? The word love, it's almost like it's a command that God of the Bible commands you to love him. That in and of itself puts me off.
Yeah. How can you love something? It's like being kidnapped.
Yeah.
And you have to love your kidnapper.
Being forced.
Or a person who's being sexually abused or violated, that they have to love their violator. I mean, that just doesn't, to me, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So the word love needs to really be investigated a little bit more and understood a little bit more. To me, all love is energy, flowing in an energy, in that energy flow. It's not something that we could understand. We humans have created God in our image and have created the word love in the image that we wish to see.
And love is actually costly. It's actually precious. It's actually rare. It's actually like not something that you're just going to find every day. It's not like something that just grows everywhere. You're going to have to dig for it.
Exactly.
And
you have to work hard for it.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy. You may love someone that may not be easy at first, and it's work and it's whatever else, but in the end, it's worth it. Because your heart should not be given to anyone, and you should not have to love someone by force just because they're your relative, just because of whatever reason. It's deep. And we really want to bring deeper shows that break the mold of the typical paradox or paradigm of this world, So on that note, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I know it was a long one today. Hopefully the health tips helped you, the spiritual tips helped you, and hopefully that you get to understand that as much as you want to hold on to your baby Jesus, as much as you want to hold on to that romance, because some of you have nothing else but that, and we understand that. I understand that deeply, because in a time of hurt, desperation, I ran to this mythological persona that I never felt, heard, or anything, but I just put all my eggs in that basket. And it was all based on lies. I wanted to believe. I wanted it to be real. And I think all of us want that. And some of us hold on to that because that is all we've got. But it's not true. It's like Santa wasn't true. The fairy godmother isn't true. The tooth fairy isn't true. Our little imaginary friend isn't true. Jesus is not true. That note. Anything else? Thank you so much, Terry, for your comments and for your questions and all that stuff. And thank you to all who tuned in. And
all who will in the future.
sure,
Thank you
so much for watching this. We have placed our comments for approval because, we don't want comments that are not productive, that are not positive, that are just going to take away from the actual podcast and broadcasting in and of itself. So if you have a comment, please leave it. And if it's, if it's a good comment, if it's a comment that's respectful, it will be shown. If it's a messed up comment, it's going to go into the delete box. So that's all, folks. That's it. Have a good night, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will catch you again for sure next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific time. And we might do another here and there as we do according to things that pop up. Take care, guys. Be well. Empower yourself always. Catch you next time.